Hi you guys, I'm Mrs. Palmer. I'm one of the 8th grade math teachers at Rocky Mountain, and as part of our being part of our 8th grade team, we want to make sure that all of you can solve equations. Solving equations is one of the most important things we learn in 8th grade, and so today I'm going to be helping you with learning how to do that. This video goes along with the Aleks assignment that you will do after you have gone through and written down each of these examples as I go through them with you. So grab your sheet that you were given and make sure that as I go through each of these problems that you are writing every single step down on your worksheet so that you have notes to follow for when you are working on this assignment independently. Okay, first thing we need to talk about is when you solve an equation, your whole goal is to figure out what value you can plug in for the variable that will make the equation true. That's what we're doing when we're solving an equation. We want to know what we can plug in for v to make -2 equals 5 times v plus 8 a true statement. So in order to do that, there's one thing that I need you to understand, and that is when you are doing a math problem, and I know that you guys probably learned this in like 5th or 6th grade, but when you're doing a math problem, you have to follow something that's called the order of operations. And when we're solving an equation, our whole goal is to isolate our variable. So we want to find our variable, and we want to undo all of the operations that have been done to that variable so that we can get that variable by itself. So when you're solving an equation, the first thing you always get rid of is the addition or subtraction. Then you get rid of the multiplication or division. Then you take care of any exponents, and then you work with anything that is in a group. So if you have this equation, -2 equals 5 times v plus 8, the first thing you do is you find your variable. You find that variable term, and you want to circle it. You want to figure out what's happening to the v. So we can see in this particular equation, on our right side, the v is being times by 5. It's being multiplied by 5. That's what a number next to a variable means. And then we have 8 being added to that. Okay, so if we want to get the v back to being by itself, there's two things we have to get rid of. We're going to have to get rid of that plus 8. That's the first thing that we get rid of. And then we're going to have to get rid of that multiplication of 5. That'll be the second thing that we get rid of. These are called a two-step equation. So to get rid of a plus 8 on the right side, I'm going to do a -8, which is the same thing as a -8, because if I combine a positive 8 and a -8, that's going to cancel each other out and make a 0. These are 0 pairs. And one critical thing you have to remember when you're solving an equation, in the beginning, you were given a true balanced statement. So if you change either the right side or the left side in any way, you have to change the other side of the equation in the exact same way to keep it equal. So a -2 and a -8 is a -10 equal to 5 times v. And now the only other thing we need to do in order for that v to be alone is we have to get rid of that multiplication of 5. We're going to divide by 5 and we get -2. Now what this means is that if I take this original equation and I make a substitution for the v and then I evaluate, we can see that 5 times -2 is -10. -10 plus 8 is -2. So this value of v is what makes the equation true. Okay, so let's go ahead and go to the next one. And again, we have another two-step equation. So -11 equals -5 plus u divided by 2. So the very first step is to find your variable term, circle it, and then figure out what's happened to the variable so that you can undo those operations to be left with having just the variable again. So here's our variable. It's being divided by 2, and then we also have the -5, which is being added to that. Okay. So first thing we do is get rid of the addition or subtraction. So we want to isolate this variable term. We want it to be by itself. So to get rid of that -5, we're going to do a +5. Remember, this is the right side of my equation, this is the left side. So if I add 5 to the right side, I also have to add 5 to the left side. So negative 6 is equal to u divided by 2. Now, if you're a student who doesn't know their integer operations very well, make sure that you are using a calculator for every single step when you are solving an equation, because missing one negative sign makes it so that you can't get to the correct solution. Okay, last step in getting this u by itself is to get rid of that divided by 2. We're going to times by 2 on both sides. So negative 12 is equal to u. Okay, that is our solution. Meaning that if I take my original equation and I make a substitution for the u and I plug in negative 12, when I evaluate this, I'm going to get negative 5 plus negative 6, which is equal to negative 11. So a solution is the value of the variable that makes the equation true. Okay, so these are some review questions from 7th grade. We need to review a couple of other things, and then we will move to solving variable on both sides equations, which is an 8th grade skill. Okay, here we go. On this particular equation, question 3, you can see you have 2 times 3x plus 5 equal to 46. This one is different than the other 2 equations that I showed you, because in this one there is some simplifying that we need to do before we solve. And whenever you solve an equation, if there's any distributing that you need to do, or if there are any like terms that you need to combine, you always take care of that first. Okay, so distribute and combine like terms. That's what simplify means. So we're first going to check the left side to see if there's anything to distribute or any like terms to combine. We can see that there are, so we're going to do that first. So 2 times 3x is 6 times x, 2 times 5 is 10, and then we have equal to 46. Now we find our variable term, we circle it, we figure out what's happened to the variable. It's being multiplied by 6, 10 is then being added to that. So very first thing we get rid of is the addition of 10 by minusing 10 from both sides. So now we have 6 times x equals a positive 36. To get rid of that multiplication of 6, we use division. Final answer is 6. 6 is what you can substitute for the variable that's going to make the equation true. So we can see that 3 times 6 is 18, 18 plus 5 is 23, 23 times 2 is 46. Okay, next example problem. So on this one, very first thing you always want to do is you want to simplify. So check your left side first. Okay, once you've simplified the left side, then check your right side. See if there is anything that it needs to simplify on the right side. And in this case, when we check our left side, there's nothing to simplify. But when we check our right side, we have some like terms that we need to combine. So this is an 8v, this is a negative 12v. Because they both have a v, we can combine their coefficients and we'll have negative 4v, negative 4 times v, and then we have subtract 18 is equal to 62. Okay, next step, find your variable term, circle it, figure out what's happened to the variable so that you can undo that to be left with just the variable. So we can see that this variable is being multiplied by negative 4, 18 is then being added to that, or subtracted from that. So first thing we get rid of is the negative 18. We want to isolate this variable term. That's how we know what we're getting rid of. We want that to be alone, which means that we need to get rid of this negative 18. Okay, whatever you do to one side of an equation, you've got to do the same thing to the other side. So on the right side, you have negative 4 times v. On the left side, I'm going to have a negative, and then if I take 62, and I have to find the difference between 62 and 18, which is 44. Okay, last step, don't forget your negative sign. This is negative 4 times v. So in order to make that a positive 1v, I have to divide by a negative. A negative 4 divided by a negative 4 is what leaves me with a positive 1v. If I divide both sides by negative 4, I get 11. 11 is the solution. Negative 62 is what makes 8 times 11 minus 12 times 11 minus 18 a true statement. Okay, moving on. We're gonna skip to the ones where you now have a variable on both sides of the equation. So I'm going to write down the steps, and I want you to make sure that you have these steps written down on your paper. Solving equations has an exact process that you follow in order to isolate your variable. And the very first step is always to check your left side and see if there is anything you need to simplify. So is there anything to distribute? Are there any like terms to combine? And then the next thing you're going to do is you are going to simplify the right side. So again, you're going to distribute, you're going to combine like terms. So let's just go to that first step and see if we can do either simplify the left or the right. So this is my right side, this is my left side. When we look at the left side, we can see there's no distributing to do, there are no like terms to combine. So then we're going to look at the right side and we're going to do the same thing. We're going to see if there are any distributing to do, any like terms to combine, which there aren't. The next thing we're going to do is we need to find our two variable terms, and we need to collect those variable terms on one side of the equation. So in our equation, we only want one side of it that has variable terms, and then the other side is the side where we're going to collect the terms that are just constants or numbers. Okay? So when I look at this equation, on the right side I have a negative 10w, and on the left side I have a negative 4w. I think it's good practice to always collect your variable terms on the left, just so that you can follow the exact same process every time, and then collect your number terms on the right. So if my right side is going to be my right side where I only want numbers and not variable terms, that means I need to cancel out the negative 10w so that I don't have that variable term on the right side. So I'm going to add 10w. That's what's going to make that wipe out to a 0. Now if I add 10w to the right side, I'm going to add 10w to the left side. So that is 6w plus 7 equal to 37. Now that brings us to a two-step equation where we're going to isolate the variable term by taking the numbers to the other side. So remember, this left side's my variable term side, so I don't want the 7 here. So I'm going to cancel out the 7 by doing a negative 7. So 6 times w equals 30, and then I'm going to divide by 6, and I get w equals 5. So when I do negative 4 times 5 plus 7, and I do negative 10 times 5 plus 37, 5 is the value of the variable that makes the equation true. Okay, I'm going to give you one more example, and then I think that you will be ready to tackle some of these questions on your own. But before I do that, I've got to clear out some space here. So I'm going to leave our set of instructions. I don't want to take the process down. I want to make sure that you still have that process. And then, but this will give us some more space to solve this equation. So 6 plus 17v equals negative 15 plus 14v. So here's my equal sign. Here's my right side. Here's my left side. Remember, very first step is to see if there's anything on the left that can simplify. So when I look at the left side, there's nothing that can simplify. Next step, simplify the right. There's nothing that can simplify. Next step, collect my variable terms on the left side. Okay, so this is my left side. I'm going to bring all of my variable terms to the left, and then that means I'm going to bring all of my numbers to the right. So if we look at our right side, it's our number side, and we've got a variable term there. We don't want that 14v on the right side, so we're going to minus 14v from both sides. So 6 plus 3v is equal to negative 15. Now here's my variable. It's being multiplied by 3. 6 is being added to that. But remember, the next thing that we do after we've collected the variable terms on the left side, we want to collect the number terms on the right side, which means I need to get rid of the 6 from the left. So 3 times v equals negative 21. Divide by 3 on both sides, and we get v equals negative 7. Final answer. Okay. And actually, I am going to do one more with you just to make sure that you know how to do these. Negative 5v plus 12v plus 9 is equal to 4v plus 42. The steps are, first, look at your left side, see if anything can simplify, which in this case, I have some like terms here. So that becomes 7v plus 9 equal to 4v plus 42. Then we look at our right side. There's nothing that can simplify. So then we find our two variable terms. We want to collect those on the same side. Remember, I want my left side to have the variable terms, and I want my right side to not have any variable terms and just numbers. So I'm going to subtract 4v, subtract 4v. So 3 times v plus 9 equals 42. Now I just have a two-step equation to solve. Remember, we want to get rid of the 9 on the left side by subtracting 9. So 3 times v equals 42 minus 9, which is 33. And now we get rid of that multiplication by dividing. So v equals 11. Okay, so now what I want you to do is do the Aleks assignment that is called 8.ee.b practice. That's what you're going to do. And once you get 100% correct on that practice assignment, then you're going to do the retake test.